economy. Good news is, where are we on the economy? The economy. We need to stop measuring the economy by how well rich people are doing, which, people talk about all different ways of the stock market being basically just a reflection of rich people's feelings. And I know Democrats are just insisting that we're doing great and, unemployment is low. However, checking in with the real people, 66% of consumers live paycheck to paycheck. 40% are behind on bills. Near $1 trillion record level credit card debt. What happens if the economy materially slows, but prices don't decline that much?
Which we know is inevitable. I mean, this inflation is faked. It's not even real. Yeah. These prices, it's price gouging.
It's 100% price gouging, and no one is calling them out on it. Nixon did a better job than Biden.
And I mean, if you're looking for relief, like, it's not going to happen. They use the excuse of COVID, of container units not getting in on the ports, all this stuff. And, once those problems are alleviated, and you can't blame the ports, or you can't blame COVID, the prices never go back down. I mean, you look at Sacramento, for example, in rent, our rent is through the roof in Sacramento. And we've got more rental units now. We've built up some more, but the prices aren't going to go back down. They jacked them all up, and they never go down. They just, it's like Obamacare. They slow the increase in the cost.
Part of the reason they don't go down is because they're getting bought up by places like Blackstone, who then jack up the prices. They own everything, and they're taking from both ends of the coffers.
And that article it's not just that they're buying houses, they're buying the affordable houses. So they're making everything unaffordable.
Rental units. Yeah. Affordable housing, rental units. I know we've talked about this so many times, but I don't think there is a single state in the country where a person can afford a 2-bedroom apartment on, minimum wage is so ridiculous. Anyway, even to be talking about that. I mean, remember when we were talking with Jordan Sheridan about the Staten Island Amazon workers, some of them making $18 an hour, which, you say that number, and I think a lot of people think, oh, hey, that's pretty good. I think 60% of them don't have homes. They can't afford a home in the city where they're working. They live in their cars.
Yeah. And this is where I don't think people realize, a lot of our viewers probably do, but of the homeless population, half of them have full-time jobs.
They are working.
Full-time jobs even. So, it's not, the homeless problem isn't exactly what we perceive. I mean, we see a lot of people that you look and you're like, well, that person probably doesn't have a job, and you're probably right, but you're not seeing a lot of people who are sleeping in their cars, who are ashamed to be in public, and they're back in some corner that no one drives by, and they're just trying to get by, and
thousands of kids in the LA
but they're putting all their money towards their kids' health care because their kid needs a medical treatment that is too expensive and denied by their, so we're fucked. Society is fucked right now.
We are. And, there are ways that we could be dealing with it. And it's not raising interest rates, which is the only thing that the Biden administration and Jerome Powell are talking about. He could be putting a moratorium on price gouging the way Nixon did, right? He could shame these CEOs who are jacking up prices just because they can't stand to make less than, billions of dollars off the backs of their workers. He's doing nothing. We could limit the ability for companies, especially, to buy up rental units or single homes, right? That whole scam with Zillow, where part of and I think it's in conjunction with Blackstone, is by mapping out the prices of houses and the comps in one neighborhood, they can go in with cash and buy up houses at the cash value or even a little bit more, jack up all the prices, and then rent those out to people, because there's no way, unless, as a single family, that you're ever going to be able to compete with a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, and even on a smaller micro level, nobody should be able to own 10 homes that aren't in use, So if you
Yeah.
get these are precious resources in the world that we live in. It's like
Yeah.
owning a forest. It's people need to live, and you're buying up the
Yeah.
you're making it harder for everyone to live by you having 10 homes where you can jack the price up and make everyone's life miserable. I mean, we're going to have to be paying for water soon, like,
Oh, but we are, right? Like they're poisoning our water with they have deregulated all of these chemicals that then fall into our water supply. And then Nestle and all these disgusting companies have bought up water and sell it back to us, while the same plastic that they use to bottle the water that poisons our environment. I mean, it's like this horrific snowball cycle.
We're literally becoming every sci-fi thing where they're selling clean air. It's just a matter of time, because look, clean air matters now for schools. If you're going to send your kid to a school, you might have a decision to send them to a place that's got HEPA ventilation, which protects them from COVID. Or if you can't afford to go to that school, well, your kid's going to get COVID more often.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So let's go back and take a look at what's going on in the economy. It is the top issue for voters, with Democrats facing vulnerabilities over crime and a possible TikTok ban, and the GOP risking overstepping on trans rights. The most important issue, of course, is being able to live in a home and put food on your table and see a doctor when you need to, which isn't to take away the importance of those other issues, but like and by the way, I think we can do all of it at the same time, but to see Democrats just keep focusing on culture war issues, which they do very little to enshrine the civil rights of people anyway. So that's a big joke. It's just a fundraiser for them.
Right. Well, on paper, they're the good guys in that issue to most people. So that works for them. Where you get to the economy, it's not so clear cut. I mean, they're both bad guys, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with inflation stubbornly high and interest rates increasing, there's plenty of economic uncertainty at the moment, and it remains a top issue for respondents in the survey. 31% said so, followed by preserving democracy.
Oh my God. I'm actually shocked that that's as high as it is, because I think most people understand that we really don't have much of a democracy right now, but that's amazing that it's up there. Okay.
And I'm amazed that abortion is so low. Like, they literally removed Roe versus Wade.
I know.
And
I think for so many people, just general health care, I mean, abortion affects everybody, but so many people who are poor don't have access to abortion or reproductive rights anyway. Their clinics have already closed. We've done it.
It's what's the top issue. Yeah. And, when you look at, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
oh, wow. Food. Now you're going to get,
hey, you need food and shelter.
Guy on his
all the other issues. When you don't have food, your first job is to get food. So the economy is going to trump. It's the economy stupid is a phrase for a reason, because every election comes down to the economy.
Yeah.
It just does.
And every year it's gotten worse for most working people. So
yeah, and we're at a point where most people recognize when they say the economy is doing well, it comes back to what they ran on. Was it Reagan? Which, are you better off now than you were 10 years ago, 4 years ago? And most people are worse. And if you're not worse off than you were 4 years ago, you're probably doing pretty well. It's one or the other.
Right. Yeah. U.S. companies are now spending about 90% of their profits on stock buybacks and dividends for shareholders. That means none of the money is going to workers, and none of it is being reinvested in the company's infrastructure, which obviously we see with all of these train derailments now. But I mean, boy, every time you look at pretty much any part of our infrastructure in this country, whether it's roads, signs, bridges, our public schools, talking about ventilation. I mean, my kids in their public schools, that, you know, sometimes the windows wouldn't open, the air conditioning wouldn't work. There, I mean, small things, never soap in the bathroom. So you think, okay, there's 2,500 kids here and they're not washing their hands after they go to the bathroom. This was before COVID, like disgusting, right? But all of those things that our quality of life, our health, all of that, and we're not investing in it.
No, and look, you and I are lucky enough in a way to live in California, which is like what, the fifth largest economy in the world or something,
right?
On its own.
Fourth now.
And fourth now. Yeah, they just moved up. You're right. But like, take public transit. I live in Sacramento, which is an hour and a half ride from San Francisco, maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
To take public transit to San Francisco, which I used to do, you could take a bus, which is a long ride, and it, I don't know, I think you get out of it round trip maybe $25. But to do the train to go into the city to my destination, it's $75, and I'm still not at my destination. I still need an Uber, or I have to walk like 2
It's
miles.
that last mile problem that they talk about a lot.
But so $75 round trip.
That's insanity.
to not pollute the environment. So that's your like safer.
That's 10 hours of minimum wage.
Your better option, you know, like environmentally, to get from the capital of the fourth largest economy in the world, an hour and a half away. There is no
good public transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've really done it to ourselves.
But where's our money going? Well, how about 1.1 trillion to military and law enforcement?
I mean, look at that. And the social programs are what, 580, what does that even say? 584 billion. Yeah. What a disgrace. Because what are we even protecting at this point? We have almost 600,000 people living on the streets. We have, most people are in desperate shape in credit debt, medical debt. Our public schools are being completely defunded. We can talk about that Chicago mayoral race where all the worst schools from the Obama administration are weighing in on the far right Democratic Vallis, what's his name? Paul Vallis, who, you know, wants to defund public schools. I mean, where are our priorities?
And meanwhile, we're bailing out a bank. Let's just be real about it. We're
super important.
It's look, I appreciate that we're not bailing out the investors in the bank, but
we kind of are, though.
The people who put their money in the bank are being covered beyond the $250,000 that the FDIC insures.
Yeah.
And why? Because they're Silicon Valley bank investors. They're, you know, Rokana, for example.
Yeah. And just think about what happens with health insurance if you're not at the gold level of your health insurance and you didn't pay for that treatment or that imaging, or, you know, all of the people who are denied treatments because they didn't pay the right amount into their health insurance companies to provide those higher level treatments. They're just told to fuck off and die. But the bankers and the, you know, the startup companies, they're bailed out.
And like, you know, Blackstone isn't a bank, but like banks are buying up real estate as well.
Yeah.
And let's show the clip on the bankers.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one that explains all of it. Yeah, Devin, I know. Not super happy. We're going to get there. Okay.
The shots will kick in any second.
Shots are going to kick in.
Be a ball of joy.
Okay, this is how banks work. This is a great breakdown of what happened.
How do you think things are going at the moment?
Well, there's a great deal of international concern. I mean, we're taking a toweling, but things will sort themselves out, Brian. This is what a market does.
Well, can you explain to me how it all works?
How the economy works?
Well, yeah, what's the problem at the moment, for instance?
Well, what we've got at the moment is an international credit crisis.
Yes, how does that happen?
Well, I'm a bank, Brian, and I borrow money and I lend it out, and I charge more to the people I'm lending it to than I pay to the people from whom I'm borrowing it.
Well, who do you borrow money from?
Well, from, you know, depositors, Brian. Have you got a dollar?
Well, yeah,
you know, I borrow your dollar and I give you, you know, there's your bank balance.
$1.
$1.
Right, okay, and you pay interest to me on that?
I do, but I also charge you fees.
Well, why do you charge me fees?
Because, Brian, I'm looking after your money. Your money is secure with me. I'm a bank. I mean, this is a very important amount of money. This is probably your nest egg. It's safe with us.
And how much interest do you pay me?
Approximately the same as I'm charging you in fees.
Oh, good deal for me.
Well, your money's secure with us, Brian, and I then lend that money to businesses, and those businesses generate income. This is how we build an economy.
Yeah. And they put that income into the bank.
They do, of course, Brian, and that builds the savings pool, and we can invest more money.
Well, who do you lend that to?
Well, to people who need credit, Brian. You see, money creates more money, so if we can create money that creates more money, we're broadening the economy, we're expanding it all the time. Yes.
But shouldn't people just buy the can afford?
You don't need to afford the things you're buying, Brian. You need to afford the interest on the money you need to borrow in order to buy them.
And you're charging higher rates for all this?
We do hop into them a wee bit on the credit rate, Brian. We stick the hydraulics under that because it's a slightly higher risk strategy.
Do people need to be buying these things that they can't afford?
Obviously they think so, Brian. I mean, these things are advertised to people as very necessary, very important and deeply, deeply attractive.
Well, who's advertising things that people don't need?
The companies we're lending the money to.
So, OK, then you bought into the US subprime housing market.
Well, Brian, so concerned are we to build a better Australia.
You helped build a worse America.
Yeah, well, that was an accident, Brian. What we were doing was investing in the international investment market.
And that's been a disaster.
It, frankly, famously, hasn't been a huge success hitherto.
Well, so what are you going to do?
Well, now you give me $700 billion immediately.
Why?
Well, because we need it, Brian. I mean, the system needs money. Imagine the economy as a body. It needs blood pumping around it, Brian.
And you haven't got any?
We haven't got any money, no.
What?
Well, that's actually a great encapsulation of how the whole system works. It's insanity. They just make up money from like out of nowhere to bail out the wealthiest people in the world. And they survive because they're too big to fail. The only thing I would take exception with from that is I know, of course, people spend beyond their means, but a lot of people spending beyond their means are spending it on actual necessities. It's not, yes, we are a consumer driven society and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, at this point, I think we're in such desperate straits that my edit would be, I would remove that one bit, but other than that, that's a pretty good summation of how it all works.
I mean, the 1 trillion that we have in credit card debt, that's largely people just struggling. And if you broke it down to medical bills, I mean, a lot of that is going to medical bills.
Yep. Sometimes it's going to your rent. I mean, all right. Should we move on to another cheery subject, or what do you think?
Well, we haven't told people how to get us out of this mess.
Okay.
Yet. So you should start living in apartments without windows. Sunlight is kind of one of those
overrated.
Things. You want to save some money and skip the sunlight.
You do not need sunlight.
Or as literally CNN, I thought this was a parody account.
Yep.
But CNN has an article about the high price of eggs and other breakfast staples is forcing some to look for cheaper breakfast alternatives. How about ramen?
Look at that. Ramen.
I thought about ramen.
I mean, high price of eggs, which again is something that Biden could come out and shame the CEOs and tell them to stop price gouging on basic necessities.
He could put a cap himself on the cost of any goods relative to the increase of the inflation rate. FDR did it. Presidents have the power to stop price gouging.
Absolutely. People went from savings to nothing to debt over the last 40 years. That is absolutely true. And hey, Junior, thank you for this, JR Junior. David Graeber's amazing. David Graeber's Debt, the First 5,000 Years. Highly recommend. That's great. I know I'm trying to read everything, but I can't get there fast enough. But screw CNN, feels like evergreen. Okay, what do you think?
Here's an actual parody that they got kicked off Twitter and they're back, but I've been enjoying this one.
Me too.
Somebody's asked me if it's me. I wish it was me, but the Verts Lart Nick, which is a spoof of The Atlantic, a right-wing rag.
Your death and or disability won't feel so bad if you think about how it will benefit the economy, which is the whole modus operandi of the US. It's get back to work, help the economy, get COVID, die.
Get COVID again, get COVID again. leverage the last dollar you have in your savings and credit cards to pay for medical bills. And once you're depleted of all that stuff, die.
Yeah.
All right. It is a cheery show, isn't it?
Cheery. So cheery.